Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Arundhati Ramanan and these are the headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. Global markets on tenterhooks after US and China trade conflict flares up once again. Stocks edge higher in Europe after President Trump signals openness to dialogue, claiming it will all be fine. Trump also warns China's export control on rare earths is a major barrier to talks. Indian officials will head to Washington for trade talks. Sources highlight good progress in negotiations. Both sides are hopeful of concluding the first tranche of the trade deal by fall. Tears of joy for family members as Israeli hostages return home after 2 years as the first phase of the Gaza peace plan gets underway. Buses carrying nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees arrive in the West Bank. US President Trump addresses the Israeli parliament, hails what he calls a historic new dawn for the Middle East. Retail inflation eases to 1.5% in September, touches an over 8-year low, comes below the RBI inflation range of 2 to 6%. The food basket slips further into deflation territory. Cryptocurrencies rebound after witnessing the largest liquidation in history over the weekend. The industry saw liquidations to the tune of over $18 billion on the back of an escalation in US-China trade tensions. HCL Tech beats estimates in Q2, revenue growth at 2.4%, margins expand by 110 basis points, maintains growth outlook at 3 to 5%, reports standalone AI revenue of over $100 million. The Tata Trust is now divided on keeping Tata Sons private. Sources say some trustees believe it is important to revisit a unanimous resolution passed earlier this year to keep the holding company of the conglomerate private.
Tata Capital Limited is now officially listed on the National Stock Exchange of India.
Tata Capital makes a muted debut on the Lal Street. Shares list at a premium of 1.2% over the issue price. Its 15,500 crore rupee issue was India's largest IPO of 2025. Adani Group moves Supreme Court supporting Sahara's petition seeking to sell 88 properties. Adani is the proposed buyer for these assets. Sahara moved the apex court to sell properties like the Ambi Valley to raise funds. Zoho founder Sridhar Vembu calls Aratai, their newly launched messaging app, a contrarian bet. Calls the migration of email accounts of the central government employees to Zoho platform the start of a Swadeshi awakening. Calls for regulations of global capability centers so that innovation developed by Indian talent benefits the country, says the AI bubble could burst. The top story moving the markets worldwide, the fragile trade truce between the United States and China has been broken. Beijing has launched a barrage of measures over the last few days, rankling Washington. Here is the sequence of events over the last 2 months that has brought the world's two major economies back on the brink of a trade war once again. On the 11th of August, US and China agreed to extend their trade truce by 90 days. Things were calm for nearly a month, but after that, on the 4th of September, US asked European Union to impose 50 to 100% tariffs on China for buying Russian oil. A few days later, on the 15th of September, Washington and Beijing agreed on a framework for a deal over TikTok's US business. But on the same day, China launched an antitrust probe against US semiconductor giant Nvidia, alleging abuse of market dominance. 4 days later, things looked bright once again as President Trump and President Xi held a phone call and agreed to meet each other at the end of October. On the 24th of September, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said Boeing aircraft parts and some chemicals will be important leverage for the U.S. in negotiations with China. On the 1st of October, President Trump said declining soybean purchases by China will be a major topic of discussion when he meets Xi Jinping. On the 7th of October, U.S. lawmakers sought a ban on exporting semiconductor-making equipment to China after detecting sales worth millions of dollars in the last 1 year. On the 9th of October, China expanded export controls on rare earths, announcing it will take effect from the 8th of November. All hell broke loose on the 10th of October, with China increasing port fees on American vessels and hitting tech company Qualcomm with a new antitrust probe. President Trump announced 100% tariffs on China, which will take effect from the 1st of November. China is using rare earths as leverage since it controls 90% of all rare earths being refined worldwide. The U.S. has also ramped up the tariffs, which many trade economists say amounts to a trade embargo. Washington has also threatened to block exports of critical software. So what's next? Both leaders could meet on the sidelines of the APEC meeting in South Korea later this month. The measures announced by both nations will kick in only from November, and many experts are hopeful of a deal before that. President Trump also sounded upbeat about the prospects of a truce.
I think we're going to be fine with China. Look, I have a great relationship with President Xi. He's a very tough man. He's a very smart man. He's a great leader for their country. He's a great leader. And I have a great relationship with him. I think we'll get it set. I know what happened. I really understand what happened. And I'm not even saying he's wrong. But then we met him with something much tougher than what he did to us. Again, because of the tariffs, it's much tougher.
And on to the day's market action. The Wall Street ended mixed but sharply off lows. Nifty and Sensex closed the day in the red, but Nifty managed to hold at 25,200 mark. Broader markets outperformed the blue chips, and it was green for the broader markets. Onto the commodity market, bullion continued its golden run as investors looked for safe haven amidst U.S. President Donald Trump renewed tariff threats against China. Expectations that the U.S. Federal Reserve will cut interest rates only added to the yellow metals allure. Gold prices have surged nearly 50% so far in 2025. Silver also jumped to an all-time peak, tracking gold's rally. Trade negotiations between India and the U.S. are likely to happen this week. Sources have said both sides are hopeful that the first tranche of the trade deal will be concluded by the fall deadline. Remember, the Trump administration has imposed 50% tariffs on India, making it the highest tariffs in the world. Shivani Bazaz decodes the developments.
Well, yes, it seems like India's trade engagement with the United States is picking up pace again. A high-level Indian trade team is heading to the Washington, D.C. This week for the next round of discussions on the proposed bilateral trade agreement. This is what Commerce Ministry sources have told CNBC TV 18. So far, 5 rounds of talks have already been held, the last one being in mid-July. And sources say that the progress has been good. Sources in the Commerce Ministry say that both sides are now pushing to finalize the first tranche of the deal by fall deadline, which is November 2025, with key focus areas including market access, tariff rationalization, and supply chain cooperation. Sources also say that India is now looking at buying more renewable energy from the United States. Now, this development also comes at a time when the new U.S. ambassador to India, Sergio Gore, has finally landed in India. He's known to be close to the United States President Donald Trump, and his appointment is being seen as a signal of continued political will to strengthen the bilateral ties between the two countries. Over the weekend, Gore met Prime Minister Narendra Modi, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, and other senior officials in the Indian government, underscoring the importance both countries are placing on trade, investment, and strategic cooperation. Back to you.
So Shivani there with the latest on India-US trade talks. But speaking of trade negotiations, government sources have said that India and the European Union have made good progress in terms of trade talks. However, issues on auto, agriculture and steel continue to remain unresolved. The big macro data of the month, retail inflation eased to 1.54% in September. This is the lowest reading in more than 8 years. Lata Venkatesh is here to decode those numbers. Lata?
Well, it's as per the CNBC TV 18 poll. Our poll had thrown up about 1.55 thereabouts. It's coming in at 1.54. One should remember that this is way lower than the Reserve Bank's mandate, which is to keep the inflation between 2 and 6%. Basically, keep the inflation at 4%. Plus or minus 2, it is below the lower bound, and that's very significant. The reason for this is primarily food prices. Food prices have fallen with a thud. It is the 4th month of negative YOY food prices. That is a fall in food prices. It is minus 2.28% lower, the food inflation for the month of September. As you can see that we are in negative terrain all the way from June. And, if you look at individual items, there's practically nothing that has risen except a little bit of rise in fruit. Otherwise, cereals have fallen month on month very sharply. And, of course, year on year as well, we have a fairly big... cereals, pulses are important because they're an important source of protein. That's down minus 15% year on year. Cereals up 2%, meat and fish up 2%, egg up 2.7%. I mean, none of the food items are up more than about 2%, and many of them are down double digits year on year. So this is a significant reduction in food inflation. It will not even end here because, we have a very big base effect coming up in October as well. And therefore, we are going to see definitely another month, if not couple of months, of negative food inflation numbers. The one that's pushed up the inflation a little bit, taking away the negative impact of food, is core inflation. That's coming at about 4.5%. It's a little difficult to talk about core inflation because many people have a different view on what you should include in core. Basically, services are included in core. What is not importable is included in core. It's non-food, non-fuel prices that are included in core, and that's up 4.5%. The reason why it's up is because year ago, core inflation was very low. It was 3.5%, and therefore, the low base also makes the core inflation look big.
All right, Lata, many thanks for those details. Now, the big international story we're tracking this evening: all of the remaining living Israeli hostages in Gaza have been released by Hamas and are back in Israel after 2 years of war. A group of 13 hostages were escorted across the border by the Israeli military after a group of 7 hostages were released earlier. Relief and jubilation gripped Israel and its capital of Tel Aviv as thousands of people gathered at Hostages Square. The square has acted as an encampment for families of hostages after Hamas's attacks on the 7th of October 2 years ago. Meanwhile, Israel released 250 Palestinian prisoners who were serving life sentences in Israeli jails as part of the ceasefire deal with Hamas. Residents in West Bank applauded as 100 of them arrived. About 1,700 detainees from Gaza are expected to be released. U.S. President Donald Trump declared that the war in the Middle East was over before his trip to the region to finalize a peace deal for Gaza. The president reached Israel earlier this morning as the hostages were released. He was welcomed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu before heading to Israel's parliament. The president received a standing ovation before addressing members of the parliament. U.S. President Trump was heckled by a left-wing Israeli member of parliament during his speech. The Israeli minister who interrupted the U.S. president was removed from the parliament immediately after an apparent protest. Another MP was expelled for holding up a Recognize Palestine sign during the U.S. president's speech. Trump said that the deal has brought about a historic dawn of a new Middle East.
Mr. Opposition Leader, I said he's a very nice opposition leader. I think, no, he's a nice man. Bibi, he's a nice man. He knows what he's doing, right? No, he's a very nice guy. See, now you can be a little bit nicer, Bibi, because you're not at war anymore, Bibi. But only by embracing the opportunities of this moment can we achieve our goal of ensuring that the horrors of recent years will never happen again. You don't want to have to go through this again.
I have submitted your nomination to be the first non-Israeli recipient of the Israel Prize, Israel's highest award. As to that other prize, just a question of time, you'll get it. But I want you to get the Israel Prize, our highest award, to our greatest friend.
Coming up on India Business Hour, Zoho founder Sridhar Vembu calls the migration of email accounts of central government employees to Zoho platform the start of a Swadeshi awakening. A special conversation on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Bajaj Auto is leading the two-wheeler EV race. As per Vahan data, the company delivered over 11,400 electric two-wheelers this month so far. This was followed by TVS Motor, which sold over 11,000 electric scooters, clocking in a market share of 21%. Ather Energy sold nearly 10,000 units in October, with its market share increasing to 18.8%. Shares of BLS International Services closed with sharp losses after the Ministry of External Affairs barred the company from participating in any future tenders for 2 years. The order restricts BLS from bidding for new projects with Indian embassies, consulates and diplomatic offices worldwide for the next 2 years. Joint Managing Director Shikhar Agarwal told CNBC TV 18 that this will not impact revenue. In earnings, tech giant HCL Tech has reported a steady set of numbers in the second quarter. Revenue and margins beat street estimates, while net profit was in line. On an annual basis, net profit rose over 10%, while revenue jumped over 5%. Margins expanded 110 basis points, while deal wins grew 42% to $2.5 billion on a sequential basis. Company MD and CEO C. Vijay Kumar has said that this was a standout quarter on every front, and this was aided by strong execution and growing demand for AI-powered solutions. The company has hired over 5,000 freshers this quarter, making it the highest quarterly hiring in the last 3 years.
Our advanced AI revenue this quarter exceeded $100 million mark, representing approximately 3% of our revenue. We grew our employee base in line with the demand that we are seeing, and we continue to grow our revenue per employee as we leverage AI in everything that we do.
And speaking of AI, ChatGPT maker OpenAI and Broadcom have said that they will work together to develop and deploy 10 gigawatts of custom AI chips in computing systems over the next 4 years. The two companies have been collaborating for 18 months on a new line of co-designed chips. This follows OpenAI's massive compute commitments in recent weeks with NVIDIA, Oracle, and AMD. Shares of Tata Capital made a tepid debut on the bourses, listing at a 1% premium over the IPO. The company's IPO received healthy booking after its 3-day subscription. The 15,500 crore rupee public issue was subscribed 1.95 times as of the final day of bidding. Speaking to CNBC TV 18, company CEO Rajiv Sabharwal said that Tata Capital's model is resilient in terms of growth and quality.
We have multiple engines for growth. Whether it is the consumer business, whether it's housing, whether it's SME, or it is corporate. So we have believed in a strategy of using multiple engines for growth, and we will continue to do so in the future too. It gives us a big advantage. Even if one segment is not doing well, we have an ability to go conservative in that area and accelerate the other areas so that our overall growth rate does not get impacted.
Tata Trust remains divided on taking Tata Sons private. The trustees met last Friday for a board meet, days after a rift within them came to the fore. Some trustees believe that it may be important to revisit the decision to keep Tata Sons private. Sources say that only 6 months back, the trustees had passed a unanimous resolution to keep Tata Sons private. Tata Sons is the holding company of the conglomerate in which Tata Trust owns a 66% stake. The RBI designated Tata Sons as an upper-layer non-banking financial company, which mandates public listing. But Tata Sons has applied for an exemption, and that application is currently under review. We spoke to 2 former Tata Group insiders who had differing perspectives. Take a look.
We are making a big issue out of something which is not that significant. It is true that there may be some difference of opinion, But I think you're making a mountain out of a molehill. It is true that the difference of opinion would relate to certain significant aspects. But I don't believe there's anything like a coup d'etat here.
They need to list. I suspect that to get an exemption from this ruling will not be as easy as people think it is, nor there is any reason for an exemption to be given, because the Tata Sons is a major holding company with a lot of holdings in major Indian companies, which are important for both the shareholders in India as well as the consumers in India. So we need more visibility, we need more transparency.
Onto a CNBC TV18 exclusive, Relega Enterprises is preparing to take its health insurance arm, Care Health Insurance, public. Sources say that Relega is working on a scheme of arrangement that will pave the way for a share swap allocation and an eventual listing of its subsidiary. Relega holds nearly 63% stake in Care Health. As per sources, Care Health could be valued between 16,000 crore rupees and 17,500 crore rupees. Shares of Vodafone and Idea tanked nearly 4% in trade. This after the Supreme Court deferred its plea on AGR dues till 27th October. The case was deferred for hearing after Solicitor General Tushar Mehta sought additional time. This is the fourth time that the Supreme Court has deferred this case. The Enforcement Directorate has conducted searches at 7 locations in Chennai linked to Shrey Sun Pharma. The searches connected to the Coldriff cough syrup case comes after at least 22 children allegedly died after consuming the contaminated syrup. Sources told CNBC TV18 that the searches covered residential and official premises of key employees of the company. The searches also included senior officials of the Tamil Nadu Drugs Control Department. The probe stems from a case initially registered by the Madhya Pradesh police. It's a setback for Asian Paints. The Supreme Court has refused to hear the company's plea against dismissing CCI's probe. The competition watchdog was investigating the allegations of abuse of dominance raised by Grasim Industries. This dismissal will now pave the way for CCI to probe Asian Paints based on Grasim's complaints. Remember, Grasim Industries alleged that Asian Paints offered arbitrary discounts, coerced dealers and manipulating supply after the company entered the market. The Adani Group has approached the Supreme Court supporting Sahara's petition for the approval of the sale of 88 properties. Adani is the proposed buyer of these properties. Sahara moved the apex court to sell properties like the Ambi Valley to raise funds. The term sheet for sale of properties has been submitted to the apex court. Sahara and Adani are looking at sale of further properties beyond the list of 88 submitted before the court. Zoho founder Sridhar Vembu has called Aratai, their newly launched messaging app, a contrarian bet. Speaking to Shireen Ban, Vembu called the migration of email accounts of central government employees to Zoho platform the start of a Swadeshi awakening. He has also called for regulations of global capability centers so that innovation developed by Indian talent benefits the country. Take a look.
Nearly 2 years ago, the government, the NIC, selected Zoho after a very long, arduous process of evaluation, a lot of audits, over 18 audits performed, and it was selected, and it is now already serving a fairly large number of users within the government. I believe about 1.5 million now and growing. So this happened well before this current episode. Now, how did we arrive at this moment? It's basically, I call it the Swadeshi awakening we are going through. And I've been part of the whole Swadeshi movement, Swadeshi technology movement for a while now. In fact, I am very proud to be associated with the Swadeshi Jagran Manch and Sri Sundaramji from Madurai. And I've actually had long conversations about the need for technology self-reliance in India.
The countdown to Bihar Assembly polls has begun. The NDA finalized its seat-sharing arrangement for the polls over the weekend. The BJP and the JDU will be contesting 101 seats each. The BJP has been the junior partner in the alliance since 2005, with JDU always garnering a greater seat share. But this time, BJP has placed itself on an equal footing with Nitish Kumar's party. Union Ministry Chirag Paswan, who reportedly had demanded 40 seats for his party, has been allotted 29. Smaller allies, Upendra Kushwaha and Jitan Ram Manji's parties, have been allotted 6 seats each. Delhi's Roos Avenue Court has framed corruption charges against former Railways Minister Lalu Prasad Yadav, former Bihar Chief Minister Rabri Devi and RJD leader Tejaswi Yadav. This pertains to the alleged corruption in the tender of 2 IRCTC hotels in Ranchi and Puri. The accused have also been charged with several offences, including conspiracy and cheating. Lalu Yadav, Rabri Devi and Tejaswi Yadav pleaded not guilty and they physically appeared before the court. The Supreme Court has ordered a CBI probe into the stampede that took place during a rally by actor Vijay's party, where 41 people were killed. The court also formed a three-member committee led by former Supreme Court Judge Ajay Rastogi to oversee the probe. The CBI will have to file monthly reports before the panel. The Nobel Prize for Economics has been awarded to Joel Mokyr, Philip Aghion and Peter Howitt for explaining innovation-driven economic growth. According to the Nobel Prize Academy, one half of the prize will go to Joel Mokyr for having identified the prerequisites for sustained growth through tech process. The other half will be jointly shared by Aghion and Howitt for the theory of sustained growth through creative destruction. And with that, it is a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you for watching. News continues right here on CNBC TV 18.